Some of my favorite moments include going to the movies. These are timeless treasures that I hold in my heart. I remember going to see Jurassic Park with my parents in June of 1993. I had never seen anything quite like it before. I was hooked on Steven Spielberg movies after that. I remember seeing Saving Private Ryan with my dad, another Spielberg movie. It meant so much to me to see this realistic war film with my dad. One of my best friends since I was in first grade, Brian Smith, he and I loved to go to the movies. We used to count how many movies that we could see in the theaters during the summer months. I think our record was 26 movies from the beginning of May through the end of August. Some of our favorite movies that we saw together, he would probably agree, are The Matrix, Fight Club, and Star Wars Episode 1. We used to invite all of our friends to go to the movies with us. We would have like a group of 20 people going to the movie with us sometimes. Star Wars Episode 1 was a movie that we had been waiting to see together since we were kids, and we fell in love with Star Wars. We would track how old we would be, and where we thought we would be in our lives by the time Episode 3 came out. Episode 3 came out in May 2005, and I graduated from Texas Wesleyan University the same month, and I was set to marry my wife, Shannon, who's in the nursery and can hear me, in June 2005. I used to tell Shannon, 2005 is the year of our wedding and Star Wars Episode 3. And Shannon would say, no, 2005 is the year of our wedding. Star Wars does not rank up there with our wedding. The Dark Knight Rises has been the most anticipated movie of the year. It is the final installment of Christopher Nolan's recent rendition of Batman's story. I saw Batman Begins the day that it premiered in 2005. I saw The Dark Knight in 2008, the day that it premiered. I was so mad when I sat in front of a group of teenagers who talked throughout the entire movie during The Dark Knight that this time I was more prepared. I bought my tickets for The Dark Knight Rises a few weeks ago. Yes, this is how much of a nerd I am. I bought my tickets for 12 noon on Friday. My philosophy was that if I'm going at noon, there is less of a chance that talkative teenagers will be there to spoil the movie for me. And that evening, the night before though, I was crazy just contemplating why in the world I didn't buy tickets for the midnight premiere because I was so excited about seeing this movie. And Friday morning I woke up and I immediately said, "Come on, Shannon, it's Batman Day, get ready." She then told me about the events that unfolded in Aurora, Colorado. The first words out of my mouth were, "That's horrible." I said, "Well, my sermon just changed." I said, "Now things are a little too real." Christopher Nolan, the director of the Batman films, he said, "I believe movies are one of the greatest American art forms, and the shared experience of watching a story unfold on the screen is an important and joyful pastime." He said, "The movie theater is my home, and the idea that someone would violate that innocent and hopeful place in such an unbearable, savage way is devastating to me." Wrong. Shannon did not want to go to the movie after hearing the events of Friday. And for a movie that challenges our fears and confronts tragedy already, Shannon couldn't bear to watch this movie. This tragedy had tried to rob us of one of our favorite things to do. A few of my friends who work or have worked in movie theaters have questioned what they would do if they were in a situation like the one in Colorado. Parents have said that they ship their kids off to watch the midnight premiere. They can't even imagine not seeing their kids come back. robbed. One parent said he took his son to see the midnight premiere with him. He said he can't believe this tragedy in Colorado just robbed him of such a joyful, memorable experience with his son. At the movie theater on Friday, every person at the theater that I talked with was talking about the events in Colorado the night before. Robbed. This movie, I think, will be forever associated with this tragedy. What is chilling is that the lives that were robbed of life could have been any one of us or our own loved ones. This is why the pain that these families must feel is the same pain that we feel and that people all over America are feeling. How do we respond to tragedy, hatred, and suffering? Many have responded with anger. Anger at the lives that were taken, anger at the joyful pastime that has been destroyed, anger at the senseless acts of violence, anger at the killer. Many have responded with prayers. Prayers for the victims and their families, prayers that people will not lose their faith in God, prayers that nothing like this will ever happen again. Many have responded with questions. Questions about why the killer did this. Questions about who the victims are. Questions about our future safety at the movies. Questions about why God would let this happen. Some have responded by holding out donation buckets for the families of the victims outside movie theaters. Some have responded by going to the movies despite the tragedy to prove to this killer that he did not win. Some have responded by writing prayers and blogs online to share their feelings and try to make sense of this by sharing their thoughts. Most are remembering to treasure the moments that they have with their families because we do not know whether a joyful moment of our own can ever be robbed of life for one of us. Batman's story is about a young billionaire, Bruce Wayne, who was robbed of his childhood when his parents were killed in front of him in cold blood. Bruce Wayne is stuck in the aftermath of what to do with this unbearable suffering. Bruce has this fear of bats that becomes a symbol as he also faces his fear of going through life without his parents. Bruce is struck with unbearable anger as he wants to seek revenge against the person who killed his parents. Bruce has to confront this dark side of his. He has to face this pain and this suffering, for it is becoming his identity. Viktor Frankl is a Jewish theologian who is famous for his search for meaning. Frankl was in the concentration camps during World War II, and during this time of intense suffering is when he began to search for the meaning of life. He began to not just stay stuck in his suffering in this horrible, horrible place, but he tried to find meaning amidst this suffering. Christopher Nolan, the director of the Batman films, is my favorite director. I wrote a paper on him for my faith and film course in seminary, and every single one of his films deals with the subject of suffering. In fact, every film he's made deals with the subject of losing someone they love, and almost all of the films deal with losing a spouse. I don't know what it is, but something has led Nolan to make a suffering part of the theme of every one of his movies. Something has led him to make suffering part of his identity and what he is known for. As Bruce Wayne confronts his suffering, he is met with temptation. His mentor, called Ra's al Ghul, warns him of his compassion. Ra's al Ghul says, "Your compassion is a weakness that your enemies will not share." Bruce, like us, has to discover how he will react to suffering. Ra's al Ghul is right. There are some people who create senseless acts of violence that show no compassion. And we have to make a choice. Will we confront our enemies with the same compassion, despite knowing that there will be those who never do? Other superheroes and villains, they deal with the same subject line. Matt Murdock is a lawyer by day and a superhero vigilante Daredevil by night. Like Batman, Daredevil is faced with the challenge of showing mercy and seeking justice, or pursuing revenge for the people who have hurt him and his loved ones. Should they seek vengeance and ultimately do what they know is wrong, or pursue justice and integrity, doing what they know is right. Magneto, the villain in X-Men, like Viktor Frankl, finds his identity in the suffering of losing his parents in the concentration camp during World War II. Magneto chooses to kill those who prey on mutants like him. His hatred for those who killed his parents in the concentration camp becomes a hatred that he has for all of humanity. Spider-Man deals in the third movie with the Black Spider-Man, the slime that attacks his body and fuels the dark side of Spider-Man. The Black Spider-Man represents the sinful self that is inside of all of us. It is the temptation in us to seek revenge, to be self-centered, and to ultimately betray those we love for our own desires. Harvey Dent, also known as Two-Face, is the lawyer that's turned into a villain in Batman, who once said, "You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain." We all make choices, for good or evil, every day. Sometimes we try to make the right choices, but they end up becoming the wrong ones. We tell a little white lie that we think will be for the greater good. We kill a murderer for the greater good. Or we do a good deed for someone that they take advantage of, and it ends up hurting us more in the long run. Rachel Dawes, who is like Bruce Wayne, Batman's closest friend, and his voice of reason, she says this. She says, "It's not who you are underneath, but it is what you do that defines you." The choices we make, how we respond to suffering, ends up becoming our identity and our legacy. Many times we make the wrong choices, and we do things that we regret. Many times we try to do the right thing, but it ends up spiraling out of control in the wrong direction. Sometimes we get caught up in sin and we look around and we don't know how we got here. Sometimes our mistakes teach us what not to do just as much as we learn what to do. The point is not that we have sinned or that others have sinned against us. The point is not suffering. Suffering should never become our identity, because if it does, then we are fueled by revenge and anger and hatred or depression that just makes us want to crawl into a cave. The point is that we learn from our suffering. Like Viktor Frankl, we find meaning in our suffering, meaning that outweighs and surpasses our suffering. As Bruce Wayne's dad taught him before he died, he would continually ask Bruce, "Why do we fall?" So we can learn to pick ourselves back up. Why do we fall? So we can learn to pick ourselves back up. We learn how to defeat sin and suffering and leave a different legacy. Iron Man, who's also known as Tony Stark, is this genius who builds weapons. Yet he soon learns that the tragedy and corruption that his weapons have created while he received wealth were not a good thing. So Tony Stark vows to become a good steward with what he has been given and choose to create a better legacy with his name as he becomes Iron Man. Like these superheroes and villains, we are also faced with the challenge to do what is right and the temptation to do what just feels good. Rachel Dawes, again Bruce's voice of reason, says, "Justice is about harmony. Revenge is about making yourself feel better." In our real life suffering, how do we create harmony and balance amidst our suffering? How do we find the inspiration to create something new rather than just to pulverize our enemies and do what makes us feel better? How do we find an identity and leave a legacy that we can be proud of? For me, my favorite message about how God made you to be awesome, it was created during a time of intense suffering. I was consumed by a lack of confidence when God's word reminded me that we have a purpose and we're created to be awesome. God helped me to take my suffering and the temptation to feel sorry for myself, and God helped inspire me to have the confidence to be who I was made to be by creating one of my most well-known messages to date. At memorial services, I always encourage family and friends to take what they learned and what they loved about their loved one and hold it in their hearts as they seek to move forward with their lives. The pain of loss won't go away, but hopefully the love that we once knew will give us the strength to keep going. A young boy who lost his father once said to me, "I know I will be stronger because my dad lives inside of me." We have a choice of whether we will let suffering and evil consume us with anger and depression, or we will learn to find strength and inspiration and meaning that outweighs the evil that we have experienced. In the case of the 12 that were killed in Aurora, Colorado, what kind of legacy will we leave them? These were big fans of the movies who stayed up late to watch a film that they were extremely excited about. To avoid going to the movies now allows the wrong person to win. Living in the fear of pain and suffering and allowing someone to rob us of our joy is not the answer. We defeat evil by continuing to be who we are created to be. We strive to be who we enjoy being. We defeat evil by continuing to show compassion and not becoming the monster that they are. We defeat evil by showing someone who tried to tear us apart that we are a community and we will stand together united. We will comfort each other amidst our suffering until we erase our pain together and we can stand up and move on together. We do not allow suffering and evil to receive coverage and attention. We remember the love that was lost, and we vow to allow love to blossom for a new day. We remember the 12. Veronica Moser Sullivan, 6 years old. Gordon Cowden, 51 years old. Matthew McQuinn, who dove in front of his girlfriend to save her life. Alex Sullivan, who was celebrating his 27th birthday and was about to celebrate his first wedding anniversary. Michaela Reddick, 23 years old, whose family said that they hope that this evil act doesn't shake people's faith in God. John Larimer, a Navy cryptologist. Sergeant Jesse Childress, an Air Force cyber systems operator. Alexander J. Boyd, whose family said, "We want to focus on the beautiful lives that were ended and not the evil that is responsible." Jonathan Blunk, a Navy officer who had dreams of becoming a Navy SEAL. Rebecca Wingo, 32, who loved her job as a customer relations representative. Alexander Teves, 24, who graduated from the University of Denver with a master's degree in counseling psychology. And Jessica Gowally, a sports blogger who survived a mall shooting in Toronto recently in June, only to come to this. Jessica said this after the Toronto shooting. "I was shown how fragile life was on Saturday. I saw the terror on the bystanders' faces. I saw the victims of senseless crime. I saw lives change. I was reminded that we don't know when or where our time on earth will end, when or where we will breathe our last breath. Every moment we have to live our life is a blessing." John Blake, a Gotham City officer played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, is an orphan who is all grown up as a police officer in the new movie The Dark Knight Rises. He tells Bruce Wayne that he appreciates the compassion that he showed to him when he was a kid. He explains to Wayne that he knows they understand each other because they both have the same look of pain on their faces from both losing their parents. He tells Wayne that he has been in and out of foster homes, and each foster parent cares for a little while that Blake lost his parents, but then they just want him to move on. They just don't care anymore. May we always empathize with those who are grieving over a loss. May we put ourselves in their shoes and never desensitize their pain. May we be tools in the pursuit of justice and harmony for those around us. May we choose to show compassion when no one else does. May we pray for the victims and their families and shed some sort of light on this darkness. May we change our own identities for good and strive to leave the legacy that God calls us to. May we not be overcome by evil, but may we overcome evil with good. Romans. And may we sing together number 374, Standing on the Promises, from all the verses.